Hey everybody, it's Casey Lucas Quaid. I'm the community manager here at Dinosaur Polo Club, and I am very, very excited to have a little anniversary celebration interview here with our wonderful composer, Rich Vreeland, aka Disasterpeace. Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome. You have been an absolute champion helping us with our
We had
technology issues that we were having.
we had a pre-interview that was longer than this interview. Just trying to.
Yeah. We've been pre-gaming this interview so hard. So now that the actual interview is going to be flawless and incredible and no pressure whatsoever after that, Rich.
Yes. What could go wrong?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. So yeah, the big easy question first, I suppose. But hit us with a little nostalgia. How were you originally approached to work on Mini Metro 10 years ago? I feel like
Uh,
probably more like 11, eh?
yeah, I think it was. No, I think. Uh, I honestly don't even remember how long ago it was. I know it was a while ago. I remember like getting an email, as you do. I believe that Pete and Rob played this game of mine that I had made. It was my first game that I ever, you know, that I ever created, and to this day, it's still the only game that I've ever created from like on my own. And it's this game called January that I made to try to teach myself programming, and it kind of came out of going to global game the very first global game jam,
Oh,
2009 or something, and just being really inspired, and went home and started making a game where you walk around, you lick snowflakes, and it kind of creates a procedurally generated soundtrack where each snowflake that you lick plays a note or a chord or whatnot. And worked on that for a while, and then kind of put it on a shelf and came back to it a few years later and submitted it to IGF. And I think I think they must have saw it there, or maybe they had seen it on my Twitter feed or something, because maybe they familiar with some of my work, like Fez, the score for Fez or something like that. And I guess the way that they tell it, like they knew that they wanted a procedural score for Mini Metro, and that would be the thing to do. And so they reached out to me to do just that. And yeah, I can still remember like some of the super old like animated GIFs of Mini Metro that had like just like very placeholder art. And even from the very beginning though, like I just thought it was like a really cool idea for a game. And as an audio person, it was super exciting to think about like data sonification of a metro simulation, and like what that would, how to do that effectively. And so Mini Metro is kind of like my first opportunity to do like basically audio coding in a commercial environment, and it just kind of set me off on a very long adventure, like personal creative adventure, and also like a collaborative adventure with Dinosaur Polo Club. So that's kind of what happened.
yeah, and it's turned into a really long-standing relationship. Like at this point, even you and I have been we're working together on and off for 3.5 years now, which is very cool.
Hmm.
What were some of the unique challenges that the game's design like presented? Because obviously you are working with actually even better, also explain what data sonification is to people who probably have no idea what that word even means.
Sure. So data sonification is essentially taking some sort of data, like I think when I think of the idea of data sonification, I think of like student projects I've seen where people take like earthquake data or like weather or something, and they try to make it musical. Like they try to find patterns in the data that might be interesting sonically. That like if you can take if you can take some information and you can portray it in a different medium, you sometimes can uncover you can sometimes uncover something interesting about it. Sometimes not. Sometimes it's just kind of a arbitrary but fun exercise. But for in the case of Mini Metro and Mini Motorways, I really thought of it as an opportunity to create a really tight coupling between sound and the game, and to really help convey information about what's going on. Like I think in a simulation, is especially something that's very busy. It's super important to do that. So yeah, I mean, considerations for the kind of work that went into those projects. It was definitely a lot about finding this sort of sweet spot between like utility of the sounds, having a nice aesthetic, and not and working against the stress factor of the games. Both games have a certain kind of a certain like progression and a certain sort of like curve of like stress that's slightly different, but both games can get stressful. And with the goal of the audio is to like keep you aware of what's happening, almost like you're in like a central command kind of situation, like just giving you a lot of information about what's going on so that you can make good decisions, and to remind you when things are maybe failing, but not, hopefully not in a way that's like really irritating or like, oh no, like I'm panicking. And I think a lot of that was really just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what stuck, especially because up until that point, I mean, I'd never done anything like Mini Metro before. And at least with Mini Motorways, I had some kind of reference point to start from. And so, Mini Motorways from the audio standpoint is completely built on top of the work that we did at Mini Metro, and then just trying to like, do something a little bit more funky. I kind of like gave up, like I kind of moved away from some of the super tight coupling that Mini Metro has and tried to do something a little more abstract and fun, which I think just suited that game, because I think I've said this before, it's like, I think Mini Motorways is kind of like the weird sibling of Mini Metro in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Mini Motorways is more playful in a way that's really hard to articulate unless you've played it. It's even just like, even from like the color palettes on up, it's just yeah, it's like you said, it's just a bit weirder and more funky. And I think you've done an excellent job sort of building the audio in a way that provides good emotional feedback to the player, but also the information that they need to play the game with, like the best card that they can kind of play in their hand at the time, with all the information they need.
Mm-hmm.
So after all that hard work, did Mini Metro's success surprise you, or were you more like, oh, of course?
I don't think I had any sense of whether or not it would be successful. I think when Pete and Rob reached out to me, like, I don't know if there was like a lot of stuff that I could kind of look at and say, oh yeah, this game is definitely going to be like a huge hit, based on what came before it. I really just loved the concept, and what I got to interact with at that point already, which I think was like a Unity demo in the browser or something, back when that was a thing. It was already like really fun.
It's still online. It's still there.
Is it? Oh, you'll have to send me the link to that. I want to check it out. Yeah, so I didn't really have any idea that it would be successful. I do try to like, that is like one small element of consideration for me when I work on projects, is like, is this gonna, amount to something? That would be nice. But really, it was just a project that I thought was really interesting, and I thought it would be fun to work on. And I mean, to be here 10 years later, to have worked on two, really successful commercial projects with them, that have a really big fan base community, and the fact that the studio like really values the community and like puts a lot of effort and time into keeping things going, I think is really, really cool. And I'm just I feel really blessed and fortunate to be a part of it.
And not just like a part of it. You are, I think I said in the interview notes that you're like a beloved part of the series and a cornerstone of its aesthetic. And that's not just like empty words, man. Like you are, if you if you think about it, like the aesthetic and the feel and the toyeticness of the mini games is kind of like their number one thing, even before the gameplay. Like when people tell you, like, what do you think of when you hear mini Metro or mini Motorways? Like people always say the visuals or the audio. Like
Yeah.
no one's ever like, oh yeah, it's a good puzzle game, or oh yeah, it's a good simulation game, because like they are those things.
Hmm.
But I think the identifying factors are definitely your work and the studio's artwork built on the awesome original art direction from Jamie Churchman. So
Yeah.
having said all that, what does the mini series mean to you, like for your career, for your
Hmm.
for your emotions?
It's funny you should say emotions, because I would say that like um I can remember like working on Mini Metro coming off of I think It Follows, I think was the previous project I had worked on. I think that's right. So like, which is a horror film. And writing music for a soundtrack is pretty, can be pretty like stressful and emotionally challenging at times. Um but audio, like in coding and doing sort of like more of a technical kind of project, in a lot of ways was kind of therapeutic for me. Uh, it really scratches that itch to solve problems, and to explore and experiment. And I think there's just I was just a lot of like you know s- like kind of autodidact style like education going on while I was working on Mini Metro. And then getting the opportunity to go to New Zealand for 3 weeks and work alongside Pete, Rob, and Jamie was really, really cool. And definitely working with Pete, especially really closely. Like I learned a lot from Pete. Just as he being like a career, um, you know, uh, engineer, and me kind of being like a, I don't know, someone who's interested in programming and like kind of turned it into something that I could do in a kind of a professional capacity. Um, uh, I, yeah, I was going to segue into the first part of your question, but I can't remember what it was.
That is all right, because honestly, I feel like that's a really great answer on its own. Not that I'm here to police the quality of your answers, although I suppose I could just exit the call, but that would be a little unfair to everyone watching, as well as to you. You do bring up a really good one though. Like 10 years is such a long time, and I was actually having a conversation with Pete about this the other day. That was just like, man, like how old were your kids when you first started working on this game versus now? It's just it
Hmm.
is an opportunity for so many huge life changes, and just moving through kind of
Yeah,
whole stages of your life at that point, because you're in the decade stage. You're in the stage where you can say like, I have worked on this thing for a percentage of my earthly existence.
yeah, a really
It's
big percentage, and I think now
Yeah, it's wild.
which was like how it's kind of affected my career and stuff. And I mean, yeah, I'm 37 now, and I must have been 27 ish when I started working on. Is that when Mini Metro came out, or was it 10 years ago?
Yeah. The original Steam release in early access was the 28th of April 2013. So you would have started even a little bit earlier than that, because that was Steam EA.
Yeah, so I started in 2012. um wow, I thought it was later than that, but huh, yeah. But yeah, I mean, that really created a whole nother trajectory for me on a career wise, because up until that point, you know, I had kind of played around with audio in more of a technical capacity, like coding and that sort of thing. But primarily, I was writing music, um, and you know, that aspect of what I was doing didn't really come in. You know, it came in first with January, this snowflake licking game, and then it kind of that, you know, propelled me into being able to work on Mini Metro, and then the experience of Mini Metro was so positive and rewarding and fun that I got really into like making my own like audio music tools, and obviously Mini Motorways, but also since then I've done a lot more, you know, on the programming side in my work, whether it's like implementation or, you know, designing systems, or, you know, it's really just kind of fundamentally changed the way that I can approach a project if I feel like that's what I want to think the direction it should go in, or would be fun. You know, I'm not gonna like, if I have to write like, you know, NES music or something, I'm probably not gonna like whip out, you know, you know, like all these like systems and start like coding up some crazy stuff. It's probably not going to do that, but um, at the same time, like I'm working on a retro game right now, and I made some DSP for it. I made like some like runtime audio effects for it. So I mean, it just became a part of my tool set as far as like what inspires me, what I find interesting creatively, and it's just a nice way to get away from having to write music sometimes, because sometimes I think the less that I write music, the more I love to do it. And if I have to do it a lot, it can take some of the fun out of it. So I tend to bounce around between whatever's interesting me at a particular moment. And you know, I tend to go pretty far down a rabbit hole until I kind of get burnt out, and I'm like, I think I'm ready to do something different. So yeah, I mean, the mini series is such a huge part of that, and the success of the games has like totally made it possible for me to, you know, to continue to do what I do. So, you know, I'm just eternally grateful for the opportunity.
And what's it like to work on a project that long with like the same people as well? Because in for those of you watching who don't know, in games that's really weird. It's sort of like being in a punk band in your teens or your early 20s, where like dudes are dropping out left and right, you know, like people are getting real jobs and they can't play bass for you anymore. It's usually more like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, I've been involved in some way or another this whole time, but during the initial development of Mini Metro, I was working a lot on it and super involved. And then between Mini Metro and Motorways coming out, you know, I was just there in a support capacity for you know, mostly just updates, like if we're doing any sort of content updates. So it sort of has this trajectory of like working really closely with the team, and then kind of going off and, you know, popping in like once every, you know, quarter, or, you know, twice a year, sometimes even for like years. And then, you know, we worked on Mini Motorways, and it was kind of the same thing, although the situation was a little different when we did Mini Motorways, just because that was an Apple Arcade project. So the turnaround was quick. And I think by that point, Pete's responsibilities had gotten larger in the studio. So it was a little bit more like in Mini Metro, Pete was very much like, he was very much like my mentor in some sense. Like he like holding my hand through like, you know, here you go, like, you know, and have fun like programming and stuff like that. Um, and by the time we got to Mini Motorways, it was more like, you know, you go off on your own now. You know, you go on, and, you know, I wish you luck. And so I was just kind of in the desert, like by myself for a lot of it, just kind of like experimenting and doing wacky stuff. And then, there were certain things that I needed Pete's help with, or other members of the team, as far as like optimization and that kind of thing, because I was just focused on creative coding and doing things that I thought were cool on the output side. But obviously, if you want to work on games, they can't be too CPU heavy, and there's different platforms, and every platform has different requirements for. And typically you're trying to make the game run on a Switch because that's the low bar as far as like performance goes. But yeah, so at this point, I mean, it's been back to working on a couple updates a year. So it's really fun to have something like that to work on, where basically, if we're not working on a new title, like I'm spending a couple weeks a year working on mini game stuff, like mini Metro, mini Motorways stuff, and so yeah, to have those ties is really cool, and it's like a source of stability in a lot of different ways, like financially, but also like it's just a nice thing. And the only the only downside is that I live like thousands and thousands of miles from the rest of the team. but otherwise it's pretty great.
Yeah, it does make the communication a little bit interesting. We have this sort of like chucking a bottle into the sea communication style where I'm always just like, Rich will get this. I know in my heart that he will get this eventually.
And I'm like, I think it's tomorrow there, but earlier. So, and now I moved, so it's like even earlier than it used to be, and it's just hard to keep track of. But it wasn't too, it was never too much of an issue, honestly.
Nah, and it's like at the end of the day, it's actually really cool. I think that people can collaborate on stuff like this on complete opposite sides of the planet for all of its occasional downsides. It kind of rules,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It does rule. I don't know what else to add to that, except it rules.
Well, I guess, if I have accidentally cut that last question off with just a definitive like single word answer, then what I would like to ask you is, do you have a message that you would like to pass on to Rob, Pete, Jamie, and the rest of the team for a happy 10 years?
Sure, yeah. Well, first of all, to Rob, Pete, and Jamie, congratulations on 10 years since Mini Metro. That's really cool. I mean, it's I can't believe how amazing everything turned out and how well received the game was. And I just feel, like I was saying, I just feel eternally grateful and blessed to have been able to participate. And it was a really fun project to work on, and to see the growth of the studio over that time has been really amazing. And to kind of maintain this really nice culture is I think quite an achievement. It's not easy to run an organization and for things to not be bad. So that's a big thing to be proud of. Yeah, I love working with you guys. And everyone else that I've worked with, especially on Mini Motorways and in the later years on Metro updates. Yeah, I mean, I just loved working. Every second of the projects has been great. And it's not often that I can, it's not always that I can say that. And, here's to 10 more years. I don't know. Here's to here's to the next project, whatever it might be. Yeah, congratulations again.
Hey, and congratulations to you, because a lot of this 10 years of success is definitely based on your incredible creative contributions as well. So Thank you from all of us.
Thank you so much.